This is a vital relationship for Vladimir Putin because ultimately it's one of his only relationships with a major world power that he can draw on to support his ongoing invasion, his ongoing offensive across Ukraine, which is having a huge effect on Russia, on Russia's economy, on Russia's people, in terms of those that are being called up to fight and the effort that's being put towards the war effort.
Now, Putin's arrived in Beijing to a pretty impressive welcome ceremony. It's the Russian president's first international state visit since the start of his really unprecedented fifth presidential term. And the meeting is the third with China this year. It comes really as Russia's invasion of Ukraine has not only sort of raged on for more than 2 years, this Russian offensive in northeast Ukraine has gained some ground. Jerome Starkey, the Sun's defence editor, is with us. Jerome, good morning.
Morning, Rosie.
Can you just start by explaining what Putin is aiming to get out of this visit and sort of this ever-growing closer relationship with China?
Well, this is, in President Xi's words, I suppose, what friendship without limits looks like, although we really know that there are some limits to this. Vladimir Putin essentially wants two things. He wants the kudos that comes from a grand state visit and meeting one of the world's most powerful leaders. But crucially, he needs the ammunition and the military support that China has provided discreetly but nonetheless crucially throughout the last 2+ years of this war in Ukraine. So this is a vital relationship for Vladimir Putin because ultimately it's one of his only relationships with a major world power that he can draw on to support his ongoing invasion, his ongoing offensive across Ukraine, which is having a huge effect on Russia, on Russia's economy, on Russia's people, in terms of those that are being called up to fight and the effort that's being put towards the war effort.
Yeah, I mean, it's, Western sanctions are really trying to kind of cripple Putin, cripple his sort of war machine. Does China provide a bit of a lifeline to Putin?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is, a lifeline. I mean, there's a debate as to how effective the Western sanctions have been, that they are far-reaching, they're complicated, they are, myriad. And yet Russia's economy has actually grown over the course of the last 2+ years. And that's partly because Russia has sort of warped its economy, has invested so much of the state spending into defense, into ramping up military production, that, jobs, economy, productivity has increased in some key areas. And that's because Russia desperately needs more kit to keep its forces in the fight. I mean, it's worth reflecting on the huge losses that Russia has not just suffered, but I'd say even more importantly, that Russia has absorbed. Because it's one thing, perhaps, for Ukraine and Ukraine's allies to gloat, or at least report triumphantly, the hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers that have been killed or injured, and the thousands of tanks that have been destroyed. And yet, as you rightly pointed out in your introduction, that hasn't stopped Russia advancing. They are on the move, they're on the march at the moment. And if we know anything from history, it's that Russia can absorb spectacular, eye-watering levels of human casualties. They can endure and indeed commit huge amounts of effort to repairing and replacing both people and equipment. And that's partly where China comes in, of course, is providing that lifeline of that equipment.
And just finally, Jerome, where does that leave Ukraine's current front line? We heard yesterday Zelensky cancelling foreign trips, clearly needing to be ever present to try and stave off what you've just described, those gains from Russia.
There's no doubt that the offensive in Kharkiv, Russia has gained more ground more quickly in northeastern Kharkiv than it has elsewhere, particularly on the eastern front, in many, many months. I mean, it's almost the fastest gains that Russia has had, perhaps since the very first days of the invasion. So from that point of view, it's been spectacular, it's been sudden, and clearly a threat and a concern to Ukraine, hence why Zelensky's staying. At the same time, this is likely the opening salvos of a large summer counteroffensive. I don't think at the moment that Kharkiv city is under threat. It appears that what Russia is trying to do is to stretch Ukraine's already overstretched defenders, forcing Kyiv to commit reserves, which are scarce, to try and stop this assault. That's probably so that Russia can actually continue with its main effort, which is further east in the Donbass around Avdiivka, which they recently captured earlier this year, to try and, once they've stretched Ukraine's defenders more thinly, to try and exploit a gap further east and advance there, which is where they've really struggled to make this sort of significant progress quickly.
Jerome, thank you so much. Jerome Starkey, The Sun's defence editor, taking us through sort of dynamics at play as Putin gets this grand welcome in China.
У нас уже начались урожаи. Как?
谢谢。Спасибо.
Спасибо.
中方愿始终同俄方做彼此信赖的好邻居、好朋友、好伙伴，不断巩固两国人民世代友好，共同实现各自国家发展振兴，携手维护世界公平正义。
В Москве и Пекине наработан действительно солидный багаж практического сотрудничества.
В 2023 году двусторонний товарооборот увеличился почти на четверть и достиг хороших показателей – 227 миллиардов долларов. Китай является нашим главным партнером в торгово-экономической сфере.